Good evening, everyone. The idea of this roundtable discussion was born out of the national unrest and a desire for change right here in our community surrounding race and inclusion. Let me start out by saying that while I organized this roundtable in a moment of national dialogue focused on race, the intent is to form a more inclusive and welcoming community for all who feel the bitter sting of discrimination and isms, or who might otherwise feel anything other than fully welcome in Bethel Park. This is to be an honest, opening conversation with elected, appointed, and community leaders with a commitment to keep working forward towards this goal. This conversation will be respectful and non-judgmental. Every voice will be valued, and we will seek to better understand each other. More conversations will be necessary, and we will need everyone to join us in order to move forward with the real sustainable change that I believe we all desire. I want to thank all of our participants for your commitment to Bethel Park and all of our viewers for your interest in moving us forward. There will be a Google form after this roundtable to reach out and share your questions, concerns, and ideas. Please join Ms. Haya Eason, the service officer at Bethel Park Post 760, and veteran, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Now we'll move on to some brief introductions so you all know the participants of the roundtable. Again, we'll start with Ms. Eason and work our way around.
My name is Haya Eason. I'm a resident here in Bethel Park. I've been here since 2006. I'm also the Veteran Service Officer at American Legion Post 760 and a municipal employee, but I am a transplant. I was not born and raised here.
Hi, I'm Julia Wirtz. I'm a parent of 3 kids here in Bethel Park. My kids are mixed race, Korean American, and my husband is white. I also have a PhD from Cornell University in issues of race and visual representation.
I'm Connie Rule. I've been in Bethel over 40 years. I was on the founding board of the Western Pennsylvania Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and on the State Latino Advisory Committee. I am here representing the Chamber of Commerce tonight.
My name is Lawrence Christian. I'm the municipal manager for Bethel Park. We've lived in, my family and I have lived in Bethel Park for a little over a year now. I have 3 kids in the school district, all elementary age children, and really enjoying Bethel Park so far, and I look forward to this dialogue as we move forward. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Diane Ford. I'm representing Ford Consulting Services. I'm a consultant, but I'm a long-term resident here in Bethel Park, 5th generation Richardson family.
My name is Tim Mowry. I'm Bethel Park Municipal Council President. I have lived in Bethel Park all my life, and hoping to have a really good discussion tonight to talk about issues and be professional, and really it's just the start of the conversation and kind of a direction for the community to move forward.
I'm Jack Allen. I've lived in Bethel Park for 35 years. I've been the mayor for the last 7 years and on council for 16 before that. I have 3 daughters, all live in Bethel Park, and I have 7 grandchildren that are in the Bethel Park School District.
Hello, I'm District Judge Ron Arnone. I've been in Bethel Park for about 15 or 16 years, raised 2 children, and just love it here and love the people. And I'm interested to see where this conversation takes us. and just proud to be from Bethel and to be enlightened. So thank you.
I'm Jarrell Gilliam. I am born and raised here in Bethel Park, graduated in 1980, and family still lives here. I'm the executive director at Light of Life Rescue Mission, and I'm honored to be here with you all.
Hi, I'm Ken Nagel. I've lived in Bethel Park for about 17 years. I have 3 daughters. I have a 24-year-old daughter who doesn't live in Bethel Park, and I have a 7- and 9-year-old daughter who are in the Bethel Park school system. I am a school director with Bethel Park School District, and I really want to work hard towards making this community as welcoming and inclusive to everyone as it has to me.
My name is Catherine Tenna. I'm a sophomore at Bethel Park High School, and I've lived in Bethel all my life.
Hi, I'm Leonard Tenna. I lived in Bethel Park for 20 years, and before that, kind of all around. I'm a transplant also. I'm a community member, and I have 3 wonderful children, 2 sons, and a wonderful daughter that's here with me today.
Hello, I'm Pam Dobus. I've lived in Bethel Park for over 60 years. I was born and raised here. I graduated from Bethel Park High School in '71. I taught in the Bethel Park School District for 35 years. And now I've been on the school board for the last 6 years, and I'm the president of the school board for the last 8 months. So I'm very excited, having been here for my entire life, to have this conversation tonight.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Dumont. I am the principal at Benjamin Franklin. I am not from Bethel Park. I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, and this will be my 6th school year with the Bethel Park School District. And I have a lot to learn from all of my community members here.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to share my belief that this community has been nothing but welcoming to me. But some stories that were relayed to me made me realize that it may not have been as welcoming to others. And this isn't an indictment on the community. It's one of those things. If neighbors don't know that people are being made feel a certain way, they can't react to counter those feelings or those perceptions. So this is born out of the idea that we have to recognize that people are different, celebrate their differences, and allow people the space to express that that they feel less than welcome in our community, so that we can all help them feel more welcome. I want to open it up to some conversation now about experiences or perceptions or anything that any of our community leaders have been doing to try to combat some of these issues. So, does anybody want to start?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to start, as a newbie to Bethel Park, I know that when I first came to Bethel Park, I was approached by Diane and Connie, who came to my office, and we discussed incidents that happened, and then that stemmed and moved forward with the community garden, trying to bring awareness, and that's something that we've been trying to perpetuate ever since. I know that we have a lot more to do than just that community garden. Stan started in 2014 with your sister Tracy, and that has, it has just snowballed into IMS, where they're starting another, group. August 28th, they want to share this video for Martin Luther King's speech. A lot of the students and teachers are getting involved. It's trickling down to the elementary school as well. So I feel that, with you starting these community events, it coming into the school, that'll be a way for our students to take it globally and not just keep it within the Bethel Park community. And I think that's the goal, to be global when we start from home.
After Diane's presentation to the school board, we had many comments supporting our moving forward in terms of learning more about what instances are occurring in the Bethel Park district and how we can address those issues. So actually, in my 6 years, after 6 years, we finally have 9 goals that we adopted on Tuesday, and our 9th goal is to create a district task force to learn, listen, and understand equity and diversity issues in the Bethel Park School District, and then to report its findings and recommendations to the board by June 30th, 2021. So I think that goal is a recognition that we have work to do, and we are willing to do that work in order to understand all of these issues that we're talking about, which it's interesting to me because the word diversity is in our goals. And when I was the head of the English department in 1993, the school board objected to our use of the word diversity in the curriculum when we were trying to encourage more multicultural reading as an English teacher rather than just the white canon that some of us grew up with. And they changed the word to variety. And I mean, it was astounding to me, and, we fought it and different things like that. But it was, variety is not the same as diversity, and diversity doesn't mean perversity. So we, I think, have come a long way from '93, but I think that we're still, obviously, from adopting this goal, we recognize that we still have further to go. And in terms of education, and Diane pointed this out to us a couple weeks ago, there's what we teach in terms of history, we have to examine more closely, and we learned all about that more so in the last month or so, about there's also a bias in our history books. There is a bias. Let's just recognize it and work and move forward with it. So.
I would like to start by sharing a story. I guess that first, at Light of Life, we work with addiction, and the beginning of any journey of life transformation starts with admitting that there's a problem. And so what I'm encouraging us to do is to be able to have a conversation that will acknowledge that there's a problem without becoming defensive about it. But it's just saying, let's hear the story and let's realize there can be some different experiences that we all have. Some of my white friends, they have the best of intentions, but they can also have unawareness of certain experiences that are true for others. And so you can be willfully ignorant, or you can be ignorantly ignorant. And so sometimes it's just a matter of saying, you know what, I want to learn, and I want to be in a position of learning to be able to understand. I grew up here in Bethel Park, as I said earlier, proud, alum of this high school. And I was sharing earlier that my friend Tim, we were in school together. And I remember going through this school district that there were some people that I was around that clearly treated me differently because of my color. But there were others that accepted me for who I was, and I was a friend with them. And Tim was one of those. We've always, we were in class together, we saw each other, and over the years it's been the same kind of interaction. I've always felt valued and honored in his presence, and we've had mutual things that we did together, and that's been great. However, When we were together at the high school, back when it was a campus, the reality is that my experience in Bethel Park was different than his. I remember as a kid going to the swimming pool, and we were not allowed to go to Corrigan Drive swimming pool. And my kids have a hard time believing that that was my reality, but I grew up like that. We had to walk from Coverdale, we used to call it at the time, by Industrial Boulevard, past Corrigan Drive swimming pool to Sully's pool. And that was my experience growing up. I remember going to, at the time it was Murphy's, and now it's Walmart, and we were regularly followed in that store when we would go in. When me and my brothers would go into that store, that was just, it wasn't even a thing that was unusual. That was just, we expected it. They would follow us, and we would hear the announcements. And so I could go on and on. That was my experience. But I go back to my friend Tim. He may look back at Bethel Park and his experiences growing up, and although we had no problems together, when it comes to experiencing these issues of intolerance or prejudice, he just did not have to have those same, he did not have the same exposure to those things that I did, to the harm that I did. And what we can agree to is that we need to see that changed. And we need to be committed in, one, him being able to hear my story, because I don't know until the other week if I've ever shared that with him. And so, but by him understanding that, he can understand some of the history and some of the legacy that I am aware of this very great city that we live in. But things can get better if we come together.
I don't like to correct Jarrell, but I'll go back to his opening statement. He said he graduated in 1980 and we did graduate together. I thought we discussed it, and I think graduated in 1995.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Jarrell really brings up a good point. If we were friends back in high school, and I was brought up to treat everybody how you want to be treated, and that's the thing that my parents instilled in me, and I do that to this day. Well, at least I think I do it to this day. But I think that's where we need to start, is treat everybody equally. That, and even if you say something that may be offensive to whoever, it's up to us, and I know I've done this before, is maybe take the people on the side and say, you know what, I didn't really appreciate that. Not in a confrontational manner, but in a way to get them to understand, because sometimes we do things to be, it comes across differently. My perception may be different than somebody else's perception. My jokes, I think, may be funny, and maybe they're not. But in reality, it's really the communication. It's starting that in a trust, in being able to discuss and have those tough discussions, no matter who it is. If it's something wrong and you didn't like it, you owe it to that person to go up and say, hey, we talked about this and it made me feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. And I think that's where a lot of it starts. It starts at home, it starts in the schools, it starts in the community. We all need to reach out and just communicate. That was 1995, Jarrell.
I just wanted to add to that. One of the things that disappointed me from the Zoom meeting that we had is I didn't hear that there was anyone from the religious community here. I know you work with Light of Life, but I meant specifically the religious church community, because the two institutions that have historically maintained stereotypes have been school systems, colleges, universities, and churches and religious organizations. So maybe we could invite someone from, or one or two people. Maybe I could step out and someone else could come in to speak regarding what they think their congregants could benefit from in terms of what we're trying to do, starting at a younger age. I will tell you, amazingly, about a week before I was invited here, a parent, my daughter just graduated from the high school, but a parent who also had a graduating senior, our daughters played softball together in Bethel Park. in elementary school, and she was coming to the library, and she walked right up to my window, and she said, listen, she said, I don't know how you feel about this. She said, but when we're back in session, I would like to have, if you know someone, I would like to have someone that is African American, male, and good with children to come in so that the children that I teach can be exposed to them earlier, and so it's not this teenager, don't want to get into stereotypical names, but a teenager that has maybe a criminal background or is mischievous, that perception and stereotype could be dispelled early on, because if the communities that you're in are predominantly of your background, then, you know, unless you teach your children to go outside of that, they probably won't. There's a safety measure in place. We like being around people that look like us and sound like us and eat like us and dance like us and speak like us. We like that. But I had the benefit of an educator as a mother who made sure we left our zip code so that we knew the world was bigger than ourselves, and that there were other people with other loves and cultures and things that they had to, the common phrase now is, bring to the table. So I appreciate that when people say, well, how do you move so well and intermingle everywhere you've been? I'm a veteran, so I've had to start over about 5 or 6 times. So everywhere I've gone, I've known how to do that because my mother exposed me to that independence and to diversity, but she also prepared me for the terminology and the degradation as well. So I also knew how to handle that. I think it's more than just having a thick skin. That's the common phrase that people use. I don't want to have a thick skin. I'm not a crocodile, and I'm not an alligator. I would like to be able to be a soft female who is a contributing person to the world, and have people just kind of think before they speak, because it may cause hurt or harm to someone, and we don't know what the after effect will be for that and with a person's child or children in their household. Thank you.
I would like to kind of tag on to a couple of these themes. One of the things that created this idea in my head to put this together was, out of the protests and unrest, I shared a post on Facebook. And one of the stories I shared was a young man, since I have received his permission to share his name with his story, many of you know him, Tiger Burks, lives right around the corner from me. He, as a kid, would walk down the street carrying his football gear to go up to the high school to play Little League football, selling raffle tickets. He was always a really nice kid. You know, didn't really get to know him any more than any of the other kids, but as he grew, in high school one day, it was pouring down rain, and I saw him walking up the street. And I said, are you going up to the high school? And he said, yes. At this point, I didn't even know his name. I just knew him as the kid up the street. I said, well, if you're comfortable with it, hop in, I'll give you a ride, get you out of the rain. And he looked around and got in my car. After that, we started a conversation, started building a relationship. If any of you know Tiger, he's one of the most warm, bubbly, outgoing people you know once he's comfortable with you. So after that, every time I saw him, hi, Mr. Nagel, and we'd have a little conversation. Well, about 1.5 years after that, I went to Community Day, pulled up in the parking lot, and he was sitting in the parking lot with some of his friends hanging out. He says, Mr. Nagel, come over here. I want to introduce you to some of my friends. So I came over. He said, hey, guys, this is Mr. Nagel. He's on the school board, and he's the only neighbor that likes me. Oh, uncomfortable. I just kind of chuckled and, didn't know what he meant by that. And he said, no, seriously. Every time I'd go to sell raffle tickets, someone would accuse me of soliciting. It broke my heart. I know my neighbors, many of my neighbors, and they're some of the warmest, most accepting people that you would ever know. But this is a kid from a time he was a little kid, felt different about the neighborhood because of the actions, probably of one person who quite honestly, it may not have even been based on race. It may have just been someone who didn't like people knocking on their door asking for money for a fundraiser, you know. But this was his reality, his perception, his worldview. And he grew up in a neighborhood, such a nice, wonderful kid, grew up in the same neighborhood as I was welcomed to with open arms, feeling less than welcome. So, to a couple of the points, our realities were different in the same, within a block and a half of each other. It's not a community-wide problem, but it's something that, because of who I am, a white man, I didn't know, didn't recognize, and didn't have to know. It was easy for me not to know. That's part of the purpose of this, is to start conversations, start realizing this is happening and people are feeling this way. And, you know, I think all of you have touched on that have spoken, and that's why I wanted to relay that story, to kind of bring it all together, to say this isn't just something that happened in Jarrell's youth. This is something that continues to happen, and we need to continue to move forward with it. So,
If I could address one of the comments that Haya said about religious groups. Mrs. Gilliam has put a roundtable together a few times over the last couple years down at the Shiloh Church in South Park. And they had officials from South Park. Our police chief was there. I think Tim was there once. Our judge was there. And it was informative. I like this a little bit better because we can speak as a small group and reach a lot more people. But when there's an audience that each has a particular event, it didn't help anything. But even more than that, it's the fact that when we leave here today, what do we do next? I mean, if we don't have a plan of action, because I've been to these with drug addiction and things, and there was a plan set up, but it was never followed through. So I think whatever, if Ken's, you know, he put this together, so he may spearhead it, but we need to go beyond today and recognize that. And the only other thing, and of course I saw this on Facebook, so I know it had to be true. And I'm sure some of you read it also. There's right across from Rutherford Acres down there, there's a Valero gas station. And, you know, apparently, I don't actually know who owns them, but, you know, the mask policy that we have, it is what it is. I mean, we didn't make it up. And, you know, me being a store owner, we enforce it too. And, you know, we've been called names for reinforcing it. But having said that, they have a problem down there of people going in and telling these people, or the owners, we're not going to wear a mask, and, you know, maybe you should just leave and go back where you came from. Well, that's absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, it just, when I read that, it was like, I cannot believe that the people still would do that in that case. I mean, there might be other cases that they may say something, but it's just people are cruel. I mean, they really are. So, again, what I like to do is, you know, after we leave this forum, what do we do next? And I think that's the way to make it successful.
Mayor, I think that's a great point. And to that, you know, we have through the years instituted a lot of different programs in the schools and in the community related to one of which is bullying. The reason why I bring that up is because it's very closely knitted to this forum. And I believe that, and the kids know this quite clearly, I do not tolerate bullying. And we have programs about it, we have discussions about it, but I will stand by any person who's been bullied. I've done it all my life. As a kid, I've actually gotten in fights sticking up for people. I shouldn't say that out loud, I guess. But I mean that. And the diversity that runs through my family and the diversity that I've always been in tune with, going way back with the Fords and the Richardsons and We have a great history, and by the way, I love your mom. She's a wonderful lady, and you better love her. And thank you for what you do and the commitment to helping drug abuse. I really also greatly appreciate that. It's something, unfortunately, I have to see all too often. And, you know, I just got done with 47 cases of criminal element cases in my court this day, and it's sad sometimes the things I have to see day in and day out, but we deal with them. We try to get people help, and we try to do the best we can to effectuate positive change. And young lady, I'm so glad you're here as well. I love to see the youth involved, and I think that's really where it all begins, because you guys are the next generation. You guys are the next group of people that are going to bring us all together. And so I'm so happy you're here. And I certainly agree with Haya about the church community. And as the mayor alluded to, that we have been very involved, and I'd love to bring them in to this conversation as well, always. I consider myself a Christian person, and to that end, I treat all people with respect and dignity and honor, and I treat people the way they treat me, and I would hope that all people feel that way. So, thank you.
So I wanted to start off by saying that every single person in this room, I've had an opportunity to get to know, some better than others. And over my lifetime, I've always known that there is always going to be an opportunity for us to disagree and an opportunity for us to agree. I say that because a lot of times these courageous conversations that have to occur do not happen because we're not telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. What we're doing is we're trying to say what we think is comfortable for somebody else to hear and not speak our truth. My reality in growing up in Bethel Park is, and I said it at the during the presentation that I did before the school board, is very similar to that of what Jarrell experienced. And not only was it a black-white issue, but it was also a black-black issue. The lighter we were, the more accepted we felt. I'm one of the darker black people in Bethel Park, darker skinned, and I probably have the loudest mouth that that will never tolerate. I have a high, or maybe I should say a very low tolerance for ignorance. And I have a very low tolerance for people who are not willing to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. My family was here in 1927, and they went through a whole lot of severe trials and tribulations to the point where I actually had a cousin who was shot right in Miners Park in the head by people who were choosing and had made a decision to pursue the N-word. They were going to kill them an N-word. I remember when we started the Bethel Park Chamber, restarted the Bethel Park Chamber, and I'm walking into the chamber door right on South Park Road, and someone rides down the street and calls me an N-word. And I turn around, I'm like, seriously? Like, are you serious? Like, that is real. So the chamber opened back up in 2014. That was an experience that happened right then. The severity, and then like I mentioned about my grandson on the school bus this past school year, was being called the N-word every single day, and he finally came home and told his mother about it. And of course, when she told me, I'm like livid. I'm calling everybody from the superintendent to the President of the United States. Like, somebody got to do something about this. I say all that to say this. We have a long, long way to go. But the most important thing is that the communication that is occurring now is happening. We could have done it years ago, and it's been great. But right now, and it's not just a black or white thing. So, like, the beautiful part about it is that this opportunity to talk about the isms is probably the best time to effectuate change, right? Because we are all on high alert. We're all scared to say whatever needs to be said. I'm not, but some people are. And the important thing about it is, when I started off by saying I've gotten to know everyone on a personal level, I truly do. And guess what? There is no party affiliation. There is nothing that I would ever say about anybody, because I could care less about politics. What I care about is how we treat each other. I treat you with respect because I want to be respected. I love you. It's easy for me to say I love you. Why? Because it's real for me. Everybody here has been very kind and gentle and genuine with me. I have to tell this story, Jack. The mayor. He and I had an opportunity a few years ago. My sister and I started that Operation Feed a Neighbor. And because we found out there was a lot of people that were hungry and needed food, blah, blah, blah. So we did it. So I called Jack, and I say, Jack, I call the mayor, excuse me. And I say, but I did say, Jack, we have to deliver this. I have to deliver this food. I think it was like Monongahela, like somewhere way out in the, well, I shouldn't say boonies, but it is out there. And so, so Jack says, okay, Di, like, when are we going? It was just that easy. Anytime I've called anybody here to ask them to do something with me or for me, or to participate in something that's going on in the community, they are ready to do it. And when Ken decided to put this roundtable discussion together, and when he and I spoke, it was just like, of course we will do this. Of course we will reach out. Of course we will tell our stories. Of course we will talk about the fact that we are better together in every single aspect, that our differences make us unique, and the uniqueness of our differences is what we are created to be. Like, I can glean so much more from somebody as a result of seeing who they are, knowing who they are. Like, and I always say this, a couple weeks ago, we lost, in Coverdale, we lost one of our Coverdale family members, Frank Vagney. And Frankie was the funniest, craziest guy, but his mom lived right down the street, and we all called her Grandma. Now, this is an old Italian woman, but that was Grandma Vagney. And so Frankie was like, just by default, my uncle. You know what I'm saying? So it was absolutely no way that anyone can convince me that our little street on Cherry Street and our experience there was that of family, of love and acceptance. And we fought just like every family fights, and we loved each other like and that is that's what I'm going for. I'm looking for not just Cherry Street to experience that, but then take that on up Mahogany and down Main Street and down South Park Road and all the way, everywhere in Bethel. And then, like Teresa said, make this something where Bethel Park is the go-to place, is the place where people desire who want to experience that utopia type of feeling, except our kids are not going to stay here, so they need to go and build community other places. Hopefully they come back, because we need them back here. But if they do not, they're building a world, a globe that's full of love, acceptance, appreciation, value. That's what I see, and that's what I would like to see happen for our community.
I think that's a good segue, talking about our youth and growing into reintroducing Catherine. Catherine wrote a poem about her experiences and her feelings on this issue that she wants to share.
So the poem is called "Even in This Poem, I Still Act White." I'm a minority, but I make people feel uncomfortable unless I act white. By people, I mean the whites that say they accept all races, but we see the words in parentheses, act white. The only way to be seen is to only speak English and ignore your traditional garb and act white. Tell me why, whenever I say the words like Tita and Lolo, I'm making people feel uncomfortable because I didn't act white. I act so white. People only remember my ethnicity when accused of racism, and I become their white friend that acts white, their colored friend that acts white. To be able to represent my culture and ethnicity, I need to ignore it and act white. But then our families ask why we cast away our ancestors and ignore our heritage to act white. Why can't I act Filipina? Why can't he act Indian? Why can't she act African American? Why can't they act Islamic? Why do we have to act white? They try to be inclusive, but in being so, they place a wall to ensure we all act white. And if we don't, we are cast aside and labeled as pushy and obsessed. So we all read in between the lines, act white. In this contract of friendship and inclusiveness, we can't ignore the fine print, act white.
That's beautiful. I told you that before because I did hear it before, but that is beautiful. And that's one of the things that we have to really recognize, that just because you're white doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't mean you're wrong, but it doesn't mean you're right. And it also gives us an opportunity to recognize that we have to learn from, like you said, you're Filipino. I know nothing about your culture. Do you know? I don't know about a lot of people's cultures that I really want to take time to learn more about. And so I think we have to be very intentional about what it is that we're saying and how it is that we're doing. So when Jack says, what's the next steps, those are the kinds of things that we have to be intentional about doing, is learning more about each other. Because I don't like, I pretty much love everybody, but I don't like certain people. But it's not because of what you look like, it's because of how you behave and how you conduct yourself. And how you treat other people. Like.
So,
sorry.
oh, got it.
I'm gonna shut up.
I just wanted to say, Catherine shared that poem after our Zoom, but it's so powerful with you saying it here. She also shared the book that her AP English class that they're reading, and I started reading it. And to speak to what Mrs. Dobis said about, you know, when you were in the department, they didn't want the diversity, but there's a step, there's proof that there's some improvement. You know, she's reading a novel, the AP class is reading a novel with Filipino history, you know, and I can relate to that because I'm a fellow Filipina. Pinay pride. You know? But I just want to say, you know, it's one thing to hear and share the stories, but we need to acknowledge that it's happening. You know, like she's reality, Catherine's reality. She has to act, she feels like she has to act white. And that breaks my heart. You know, I emailed and said that breaks my heart that you feel you have to do that.
Yeah, I feel like I wrote this poem mostly for two reasons. One of them was the book that I recommended, and it's called Patron Saints of Nothing, and it was very, and I have to say I did cry because it was the first time that I felt representation in something other than my own family. And then the other reason was when I looked at like the popular people in my school, all the popular people of color, they all acted like all of their white friends. They didn't, it felt like they were a white person in a colored person's body, pretty much.
One more thing. That is not, that was an intentional reality. And what I mean by that is, if you feel inferior, you can be controlled. If you feel like you are just like everybody else, you cannot be. You're an independent thinker. You're not a part of what people perceive as needing to be controlled. Not all people, but some people perceive as needing to be controlled. And that is you sharing that poem, but also your lived experiences as you go through this will empower other people to begin to embrace all of who they are. And I told this story too. I remember being in the gym and looking under the lights and seeing my skin in comparison to somebody else's, and I hated this. If I could have changed it, I would have. But now I've grown to love all of me, all of who I am. But that's not necessarily a racial thing. It's just self-perception. Like, I could have grown up just the very opposite and just embraced everything of who I am now. It didn't help that people, made me feel inferior or not as important. But now I see it as that's their issue. That's their problem. It has nothing to do with me. It may impact me, but it doesn't have, I can't do anything to change what body the Lord put me in. And those are the things when we recognize that we are created, or for whatever, whoever believes that, but I believe it. But I was created by someone who took his time and knit me in my mother's womb, and I came out this beautiful brown baby girl. I love that story now. I've changed the narrative for myself and in my life and in the lives of my children and my grandchildren and so on and so forth. And then I also can say that to all the babies that I'm around all the time, like from all the kids that live in my neighborhood. Come here, baby. Call me. You're calling me Miss Diane, Aunt Diane, Grandma Diane. I don't care, but you're going to call me something. You're going to put some respect on that name, right? But I also recognize that don't let anybody tell you who you are or who you are not. Embrace all of who you are. So I felt the same way Teresa did when she said, my heart was broken. It was broken when I heard that, but I also recognized that it was so necessary for you to express that. So thank you.
I just want to say, Catherine, that it's incredibly courageous for you to come out and to read your poem to everybody, because I want to kind of touch on a couple of things that were said by people. Minorities in this country, people of color, when they're discriminated against, when people say things to them, there's a lot of shame in that. There's embarrassment. You said that your grandson didn't mention it for days. He was called the N-word every day and he didn't say anything. And Jarrell, you said you didn't tell Tim about your experiences for the longest time, because there's a lot of shame in that when you are the one receiving it. And so I think that there needs to be more in place to educate our children, because it happens at a very, very young age. Our family went through an incident when my boys, they're twins, they were in 2nd grade. And looking back now, because my daughter just finished 2nd grade, I was like, they were such babies. So I feel like they're really, and in a lot of instances I've seen where the response, they tell children, report it to an adult. Tell somebody, tell a teacher, tell your principal. But when you're embarrassed and ashamed about the things that were said to you, you don't want to repeat them. You don't want to tell someone. And I don't want to place blame on anyone, but a lot of times the adults in the situation are aware of what's happening, but either they don't know how to handle it, or, oh, it's just kids, it'll go away. And it just continues going on. So I think there needs to be much more awareness in an educational setting, in a school setting, and there has to be a better way for kids to feel that they can express themselves without this cloud of shame over it.
So one of the things that has been relayed to me that I've already asked that we address as a school district, it touches on that and touches on something Judge Arnone spoke about. Different parents have reached out to me and told me that their children have been called racial slurs within our school district, and when it's brought to the attention of administrators, they have been told that it's a bullying issue and a pattern has to be established. That's not the way it should be, and I asked that our policy committee review our policies to ensure any kind of racial intimidation or racial slurs or any kind of discrimination against anybody is not treated as bullying, but discrimination. We have to have zero tolerance. So to your point, it may be partially a sense of shame, a sense of you've been made feel inferior and you don't want to speak up. It also may be a concern of whether or not there's going to be a reaction and whether that reaction is going to be positive or negative once you do speak up. And I think, you know, I bring that up, as I said, I asked our policy committee, as they're reviewing policy, this is one of the things that they focus on to ensure that this isn't the way things are treated. And if it's already enshrined in our policy that way, we need to stress that among the people who are being reached out to when it happens and ensure it's treated the proper way when it does happen. But I think that as an action item, it's something we could all look at in our policies and in our approach when these things are brought up, how we respond to them, and ensure that we're responding to them in a way that makes people feel that they have an avenue of recourse if they're treated in this way. So,
I refuse to believe that it's too late for like the middle school, high school, young adult. I refuse to believe it. Some days it's tearfully hard, but I refuse to believe it. Primarily because having served in the military, they didn't care what your beliefs were. You had better learn to accomplish the mission and take care of the man on your left and your right, or you're both gonna die. And thankfully, because my mother was an educator, when my daughter first went into Ben Franklin, I asked the principal if I could come in for 3 holidays: Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and Black History Month. Those were the only ones I could contribute to outside of March, which is Women's History Month. But I thought if I came in on those off holidays, so to speak, you know, because they have the federal holidays, that they would see someone different. My daughter would gain some confidence because she knew that she was the only African American in her class from kindergarten all the way up to 4th grade. So I did it not just for her, I did it for myself as well, because I knew that I was going to be in this community at least until she was 18. So I wanted other children in the community to see me as well. I wanted the teacher to see that I was vested in her and in also the other children. I can tell you that now that my daughter just graduated, that some of the kids, I can see them when they were, and I came in for Veterans Day, and they sang the military songs with me, or they, you know, listened to me read Black poetry and Black stories to them. And I don't think they'll ever forget that. They didn't dismiss it. It was something new. It was creative. It was interesting. I don't know if they went home and told their parents, but I knew that I came in there for many purposes, not just one. So I would like to say that even if someone had come in and read Irish history, Asian history, European history, my daughter loves ancient history. So you never know where a child's interest is, where it lies. And so for that purpose, delve in and give them the multicultural so that they can then choose what is of greatest interest to them and follow through with that on a profession. I don't think that's difficult. You may get some pushback because, let's be honest, and I tell my daughter this because I learned this at a young age. What we see was not created for us. It was not. It was not created with us in mind. It was not created for anyone that did not look like the people who created it and established it. And with that reality, it helps myself and it helps my daughter to understand why you're not welcomed or why there's pushback, because it wasn't created for you. It doesn't mean you can't benefit from it, and it doesn't mean you can't change the thought process of people around you, but you have to know that it wasn't created for you. The second thing I wanted to say is if we break up safe spaces, now I can't break up the backyard barbecue where they're having that conversation that they really shouldn't be having, that really tells about their character, but if we break up safe spaces, schools, churches, playgrounds, community events, where people feel like they are free to say whatever they want to say under a specific amendment, then what you do is you shut them down. So I put down, we need to talk about what parents can do, what leaders can do, what teachers can do, what residents and neighbors can do, what business leaders can do, and then as individuals what we can do, because we're not just residents. We are judges, lawyers, community workers, council members, parents, school board members. We are more than just the adult. And I promise this is my last comment. One of the most comforting things for me when I came to Bethel Park is there were two elderly people that lived next door, and they walked over holding hands, I'm getting ready to cry, holding hands to introduce themselves. They didn't stare at us in the driveway. They didn't walk past us and act like they didn't see us. They came right over and said, "This is who we are. Here's your recycling schedule." They did. They both passed away now, but they gave us a recycling schedule. We introduced our daughter to them. Her husband had Alzheimer's, so he would wander up the block. And so whenever I saw him, I would just kind of call him back. You know, and so there was this immediate, we're your neighbor. I can't say I wasn't amazed, because I was. And I wasn't used to people being immediately nasty, but it was overwhelmingly welcoming to come right up to our front door, knock on it, introduce themselves. And you know what they were? The husband was a retired teacher from Bethel Park High School. And even as she was in preschool, that gave me a comfort that she could come through that school system, and whatever else she got, and she got some stuff, she also got some kindness and some nurturing and some people that understood that racism should not be tolerated. And that's how we stayed in Bethel Park, because believe me, as a person from the military who has kind of bounced around from base to base, it would have been so simple just to pack up and leave after a situation, but we refused to do it. Thank you.
I really appreciate both of your points about the multicultural aspect, your mother particularly talking about learning other cultures and you promoting that learning aspect, and the fact that, you know, racism shouldn't be tolerated. I'm speaking from a white perspective. I think we have to deal with fear. I think that's the underlying issue. And you know, yeah, we can make laws, we can make policies, we can say racism is not, and we need to start at a young age, but throughout the whole thing, there's this fear. I've heard it in safe spaces, conversations. I mean, that's being pretty brutally honest, I think, that I hear it. And it's, to me, it's all based in fear because people don't know that other culture, or they haven't taken the time to meet that specific other person. And that fear, I think, drives so much of it. You know, in this country, there's a fear of foreigners. Well, underneath that is a fear of someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't talk like you, who isn't from this, doesn't have the same culture. And I think that fear has to be addressed through learning and education and through opportunities to interact with other people so that you can find out what that culture is about. I know in our Zoom meeting we were talking a little bit about having opportunities for cross-cultural exchanges, for people to get together and talk to one another and learn, you know, like I know we have Community Day canceled, but we did talk about having different booths during Community Day with different cultures that are represented in Bethel Park to get to know other people. And I mean, I think the people in Bethel Park are mostly good people, mostly kind people. But I recognize sometimes my own bias. You know, I'm going to be honest about that. I recognize it and I fight against it. Like, why do you think that? You know, and then I challenge myself. But not everybody does that either. I'm not saying anyway, but I really do. I just want to say that it really, to me, is based in fear. And whatever we can do to overcome that fear, to allow people to get to know one another and to know other cultures and so forth, I think that is one of the stepping stones that we have to also move toward.
Pam, I think that fear is so relevant. I'm thinking as old as I am, I hesitate to use my maiden name or my real name because when I have used it on a few occasions here in Bethel, you can almost see a little bit of, knee-jerk, but I myself fear. I'm afraid to even say it sometimes, for fear for what the reaction will be. And as old, I should know better. I mean, I've worked around on this type of thing, but I still have it from a child, and from growing up. It just stays with you, but I'm not sure how people react. And given the world situation today, they associate you with whatever's going on from whatever segment of the population, and immediately you see that little pushback. And that's real. Fear is real.
I know.
Your name?
Oh, my name? Consuelo Esperanza Garcia. My classmates, when I was growing up, couldn't say it, and they killed it. So I went into school the end of my third grade, and I had told my parents, I'm changing my name, and I'm going to put it in the English form. Or I wasn't going back to school, and I did that. I went in, and they went with me, and so I've used my English name, but, there are papers and that, you have to sign your other name, so.
Thank you.
I know I personally kind of relate to that fear of representing your culture, because there's a number of my friends that are white that I just do not feel comfortable talking about race in my culture. And when I first meet a person, I never feel comfortable talking about my culture unless they bring it up or I realize they are comfortable talking about it with me. And I think it's something that's kind of ingrained in our society that race is sort of a taboo topic when it really shouldn't be. It's just who we are.
That's a great point, and I think that we should all challenge ourselves to have those conversations. I'm very proud of who I am and where I come from. I don't even consider myself white. I don't even know if I am, actually. And I never even really give it a lot of thought as to color. I judge somebody by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin, said by the great Dr. Martin Luther King. So I think it's really cool to share your heritage and have conversations about it. And I would encourage all people to do that, to have those conversations, to share the pride of where your people came from and what they like to eat and their language and their culture. I think it's really in so many ways what makes our country so great. And that's what we have to guide ourselves back toward, the greatness of this big melting pot that we are and that we have. And there's so many things to be proud of. And our families are that one thing that's constant and that we should always be proud of.
So when I was in high school, I had a teacher clarify that we are not a melting pot in America. We're a salad bowl. We have all kinds of diverse and distinct characteristics that all come together to make something great. And I think that's kind of where all of us are leading, is we need to celebrate those differences, recognize those differences, acknowledge those differences. As Mrs. Ford has said many times, it's not about not seeing color or not seeing the differences. It's about seeing them, recognizing them, and celebrating them. So I think that's important. So.
Can I add something just real quickly here that we talked about what could be next steps, and this is a nice, polite conversation, and that's good. It's good to realize, though, that even as we can have agreement in this room, that still the reality is that when I leave this room and I go certain places, I'm going to have experiences that you won't have. I'm going to be treated ways by some people differently. And so it is, it's not just that we have goodwill here, but it's acknowledging that, one, that there's a problem, that there is an issue, there's pain, and that pain is real. The fear, I love the fact that you said that, because that now truth is coming out. Yes, there's fear, and there's fear to talk about some of these things, and there's fear to engage in these conversations, because what if you say the wrong word or example, and then you become all of a sudden the focus of all this anger. And but what's the opposite of fear is love. Yeah. And the way to combat fear is light. In dark, there's darkness, you got to bring light. And so I can look at that person across the street that's different from me, and as long as I stay and I'm looking at them and trying to judge them, I'm going to never overcome those fears. So I have to make a decision that I'm going to cross that street, and I'm going to do that. And so we admit that there's a problem. We become more aware ourselves of that internal bias that could be there, that I heard one friend say that there's this voice of bigotry that can be, that sometimes, somebody will say something, somebody will do something, and you start talking to yourself. It's correcting and telling on yourself when that happens to say, I want to be different, I want to respond differently. Then we create platforms that model what a healthy community is. That's where the community day ideas, or what you did with coming to the schools, and we create platforms to model what healthy society is like, and we try to give space for that. We commit to not being silent when in the face of injustice or intolerance or whatever it is. We must make a decision that when we're around that, we're in that safe place, and we're in the barbecue, and Uncle starts to tell that joke, that we say, that's not right. I I don't agree with that, and I don't want to be a part of that. And we, as each of us, making a commitment to do that. And the same thing with me, if I'm in the black community, that when things are being said about those people, that it's not those people. There might be that person is like that, but I know people who are not like that. And we have to be just as vigilant to speak up for that as well as looking at the things that are negative. And then the last thing is create opportunities for learning and cross-cultural experiences, where we acknowledge that until I know someone from your background, there's something in me that's missing. And so I need to understand that, and I want to understand that more. And when we begin to intentionally create those opportunities and go after them, the fear begins to go away, and we begin to now grow as a community where all are equal, all are valued, all have a voice.
I do want to bring up also the importance of seeing a different, talking to Mike, seeing people who look different in all of our community. So from municipality to the school district to just our neighbors, we need to begin to see people who don't look like, we can't continue to have an all-white Bethel Park or very few. We need diversity in our communities, but we also need them in our schools and in our municipality, and more than just somebody who can clean up after somebody, but people who can actually, well, I mean, that's added value, but, you know, can do a little bit more. Economically, we need to see some changes here. That evens up the playing field as well. So, I mean, there's so many different elements that we do need to address, but I think this is, and just to echo a little bit about what Jarrell said, all of those 4 or 5 components that he said are essential to really effectuate and change in building the community that is truly welcoming. Because we have way too many people who we've had to support who have needs economically that are not addressed as well. So that's a big concern for me. And, you know, we're just a small group that will say yes. We'll help people at Christmas time. We'll help people at Thanksgiving time. But there are people that are hurting in our community that are being ignored, ridiculed, talked about, bullied, whatever. And that also is a passion for mine that has to, for me, I have to always be doing something to try to change that. So I do want us to consider how we take care of our neighbors in our community.
The neighbor is a very good point, that one of the things that everybody's so busy today, I don't think we really know all our neighbors. I was relating a story earlier on. We had a new neighbor move in down the block. This is probably 2 years ago now. And one of the things they did is invited everybody down to their house, you know, on 3 or 4 consecutive Friday nights. And back when I first moved there, they used to have block parties every Labor Day. And those things have gotten away because we're all so busy. We have so much going on. Everything's planned out. I think we need to take the time to get to know people, get to know your neighbors, you know, expand your base. You know, I've been walking in probably the last year, and it's interesting that I try to walk in different areas, and I go out and I'll talk to different people that I normally don't come across, or I have nothing in common, and whoever they are, you go up and say hi, or just, how you doing? I think that's really where it starts, developing the relationship. I think the perception, we talked about one thing unique about Bethel Park is that when there's an event or there's a need, people will jump in. You know, with the pandemic, with the flooding, everybody wants to get involved. They want to know how they can help, and sometimes it's hard to put all this together, but the people want to. I think we had I've seen Diane the last 2 days more than I've seen her in the last few months, but thanks to Lawrence and Joe, we had a meeting down at Miners Park. We're putting in a new playground, the municipality is, and what they wanted to do is to bring the community down, and many of the members of Cherry Street were there, not just the adults, and there might have been 15 or 20 people, showed the 2 proposals. Everybody talked about it, then they picked, and Diane said, bring the kids over.
My daughter actually said that.
Oh, did she? And they're the ones who got to make the choice on what's going to go there. So we don't relied on them, but the unique thing about Coverdale in that area is it is a tight-knit family. The park is, you know, they're always there. It's well used by the neighbors, and, you know, they all care. Some have strong opinions, and that's great, and we want to hear that, but it's not because they're doing it for any other reason as they care. And I think that's what we as a community need to do. And to Haya's point about bringing faith into this group, maybe one of the things to think about, the concept, if we think it's good, is maybe inviting some new people. And maybe it's hard, the more people you get, the harder it is. I work with 9 other members or 8 other members and the mayor, and it sometimes as a school board it's a challenge. But I think we kind of sit, maybe, it's an opportunity, let me change that. But maybe what we do is to invite people and maybe keep some of the same but some of the difference. But if we're looked at as the leaders, we got to start and take it out to the community and our friends, our neighborhoods, and bring more people in that come with a different perspective or different ideas. And my last comment about, you know, the ethnic in the community day. And that's something we can certainly consider, or is this something we want to focus on some of these different cultures, having a different event and maybe focusing on certain ones, 3 or 4, whatever it is, have it in the center and have people get to understand. They got to get to know everybody. Everybody's proud of their heritage. You know, and we all come from somewhere. And I think as we get to explain what it is and the diversity, and people get a comfort level in talking about it and really see who you are. And Connie, we know you're married to Bill, so. But
I want to change your name back.
But I think the issue is that, you know, we need to start here, and we need to bring more people in, rotate this around, get different perspectives, and we all need to learn from each other.
Comment. I just wanted to say thank you for your comment about fear. And let me just share a little bit about my fear, because this is what I said to my daughter, because we've gone back and forth. You know, most of her friends are, you know, of European descent. And I can't say that was intentional. That's what was available, because, you know, there's a scarcity of African Americans in this community. So a lot of her friends that look like her are from outside of the community. Now that has to do with economics, where people choose to live, test scores, kind of house you want to buy, all those things. So that's not a criticism, that's just the reality for our household. But I want this setting to be a relief for people, like, okay, now we can, because I don't know how to tell my relatives, or I'm the only African American on my job, and, you know, they're stressed that, you know. So for me, my fear, and when I say my fear, at 57, I said to my daughter before she left for college, I said, my fear is that I will be in my driveway bleeding and someone in my community will not come to my rescue. Now, everyone in my community except one family is of European descent. But that is an underlying fear that I have within myself. My neighbors did not create that for me. That's what I'm saying about honesty, about fear. I didn't come on that block and they just kind of peered out of their windows and kind of pounced on me and like, why are you here? How many are there of you? How long are you staying? What are you going to take from us? That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that some were more welcoming than others. Now that may have had to do with the environment they grew up in, how they were raised, and consequently that maybe the rejection we felt from a few may have been from the same experience. So we're not you know, giving points and taking points away. We're not grading people on that. We respect their right to be private, to turn away when we walk down the street with the dog, to not say good morning. We respect their right. We don't infringe on it. We don't in our heads say the kind of people that they are or could be and what have we done to create that environment. We just let them be. And by the same token, we want people to let us be. But again, my fear has been, will I be in need and someone not help me? And that is the fear as a parent for your children, because you feel like they can't fight for themselves or they can't fight off people that may try to come in and do them harm. So that's my fear reality, and I wanted to share that because you shared yours. Thank you.
Let me just say that what I mentioned before was having a next step to fall back on, having a base to go forward. And what Jarrell said, I mean, those are the points. I mean, you summed it up. We don't have to come up with anything else to start. I mean, and I like the idea about teaching different cultures in school. I love the idea, and I didn't know how you did that at the elementary school, which I think is great. The Community Day thing, and by the way, that was Tim and Lawrence that canceled it. I just gave the message. But that's a terrific idea. And,
Can you stop that bus again and back it up one more time?
I don't like to correct people, but it was Lawrence.
There it goes, backing up.
But, I mean, I thought it was a great idea about the Community Day, and that's something we should go forward. You know, I do a TV show here, and I think it'd be great to do a diversity on the show. Never thought about doing that, but that's a possibility too. So I, for one, have gotten a lot out of this, and what you said and what everyone else contributed, I think it was a time very well spent, and it should go in a different direction.
So my intent, and I had already spoken to the mayor and council president and school board president about this, was to try to develop a resolution for this meeting. I, unfortunately, due to a lot of other obligations, I got sidetracked and that resolution didn't come about. However, I do think if you guys are willing to present something to your boards or councils, those steps that Jarrell spoke about could be a good foundation for building a resolution to take us forward. Just, we have no real, I guess, legal binding in doing this, but it at least shows a commitment on paper as a community to move forward with a lot of these moves. Is that something you're all open to?
Sure, and I think we've also talked about the fact that we're not going to disband this group of people.
No.
So that's one step for sure we're going to take in order to keep moving forward with whatever plans we have. And just for 2 cents, I like that idea of Heritage Day better than Community Day. But we can't do anything right now anyway because of COVID. But yes, I mean, I think our commitment to continue talking will result in action and events and different things like that. But a resolution, I'm willing to take it to the board.
No,
I still need 9 votes, but.
You only need 5.
Oh, I'm sorry, 5.
No, I think that's a good idea. And even from our side as participation, maybe a proclamation would be more appropriate from the mayor. Is our community leader, might be a good idea. So let's circulate and discuss. I think that's great. The one thing I'll say is, you know, you need to be cognizant of the past and understand the past. And as we move forward, we can't change the past, only the future. And I think as we start tonight, as we did, and as we looked at the community, and I'm certain on social media, and sometimes it can go awry in different ways, let's focus on the positive, what we each can do to change. You know, it's important, like I said, to understand the past, but we can't change it. We can only change the future. Let's focus on ideas, suggestions, things we can do as a community, as a neighborhood, as a family, as a district, a municipality. You know, we're fortunate in Bethel Park that the municipality and the school district get along very well. We do a lot of good things together. It maybe not always show that, but we do. We work well. We have a lot of communications because we all work for the same people. So it's important we're all rowing in the same direction, and we're going to continue these type meetings, community events. And I've found it's tough putting them together, but if you do something, the 4th of July event we started a few years ago, it was different. First year it was good. It only got better, and unfortunately Lawrence had to cancel it this year.
There's that bus again.
There it is.
I think I better know, but no. No, but we deal with things as a group and as a community, but like I said, if there's anything I can leave everybody on is think of what we can do differently. Think about the future. What can we do to change from where we are? We have control. You need to know the past, but we have control of our own future.
So, as was said, this is an important first step towards a better, more welcoming Bethel Park. We have a lot of work to be done. I think we're all committed to continuing to do the work to broaden the participation in this work. This was just an initial conversation. And when I say broaden the participation, that's among races, among other people who may feel discriminated against or less than welcome, even if it isn't based on race, if it's based on other protected classes or other minority statuses or things of that nature. I think we need to continue the conversation, broaden the conversation, and continue working, because I think our community really wants and desires to reach its full potential for all of our neighbors, all of our friends. So I look forward to continuing to do the work. I look forward to working with all of you, and I look forward to working with all of you also. Thank you for all of this, and let's get to work.
How do they access that Google form?
I do also want to say that there's been a Google form to provide feedback. Thank you. There's a Google form to provide feedback. I attached it to the Facebook event for this, and I'd like to ask the municipality and the district and any others who want to share it to also share that, so we can receive feedback and get community input on this also.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.